All right, we're live. RG today, Friday, September 19th. First time that I'll be hosting a show at RotoGrinders, so I'm pumped to do it. And I'm here with Mr. Bobby Gomes. The flow is looking luscious, man. How are we feeling today?
Feeling good. I'm happy to be here for your first RotoGrinders hosted show. Kyle, one of my favorite guys in the industry. I think you're going to do a fantastic job hosting the show. So can't wait to help you out and talk through this slate.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. I'll be here every Friday. I know Bobby's going to be here a lot of the time as well. So for now, it's going to be a lot of Friday football stuff. So obviously, we're going to have lots to talk about. We can break down, talk a little bit about what we saw on Thursday night. Obviously, last night was a better game than a lot we're probably expecting, with that Buffalo and Miami game having like a 12.5 point spread. It was actually a lot closer than I know a lot expected. So what were your thoughts about last night? Anything you saw that caught your eye?
I personally had a ton of Achane. And then obviously the Dolphins using Ollie Gordon.
Yeah.
When I ran my first stuff, I had like 40% Ollie Gordon. I'm like, why do I have so much Ollie Gordon? And I bumped him down to 15%. And then, of course, he gets the first touchdown of the game. So that wasn't great. Yeah, it was. I think that the Bills came out and won the game. I thought that the Dolphins were going to cover their spread. I think they did, right? So,
Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't really much. I expect the Bills to kind of beat up on the Dolphins. I think the game was a lot closer than what the majority expected, but I never thought the Dolphins were actually going to win that game. So kind of ended up how I figured it would.
Yeah, for sure. I think, we got to see Josh Allen do his thing at the end of the game, made a big play on like 2nd and 16. A lot of coaches just hand the ball off to their running back and hope that they just get out of there, take as many timeouts away as possible from the opposing team. But no, they went to Josh Allen as they should, picked up like a 30-yard gain to close out the game. It was okay from betting perspective for me. I think I got fairly lucky with Malik Washington getting there on the end around. I had his over 4.5 rushing yards. And then MGM threw out a 1.5 prop later in the night. So I ended up having way too much exposure to Malik Washington rushing yards than I should have, because that MGM line I think was just pretty atrocious. But at the end of the day, that got there. And then there was a pass that they ended up ruling a rush. So he ended up having 2 carries for 20 yards. I saw a lot of people upset about the ruling on his second rush, that they wanted to be a catch for either the reception or receiving yards. So it's kind of funny how that can go one way or the other. But nonetheless,
last play of the game.
Last play.
It was like a 1,000K swing the other way for me. So I wasn't.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just that he got the ball. I was hoping Achane was going to get it.
Yeah. I had the over on receiving yards for Achane, under on rushing attempts. So that ended up, the receiving yards didn't get there. He had I think he had 1 catch for 15 yards to start. And then at one point he had 5 catches for 10 yards because he just kept either getting no yards, kept going backwards on his receptions. But nonetheless, it was at least a decent way to start Week 3. We're going to be talking some DFS here at the end. We'll do some props and whatnot. So I will pull up the optimizer. But real quick, let's get what's your first sense on this slate for Week 3? What are your first thoughts, initial point of view?
Vikings, they're going to be super condensed. It looks like Jordan Mason's going to be the chalk, and along with Jefferson. So basically building around that is like a structure for a lot of my teams and how I'm going to play it. I know I'm going to be focused on playing these guys and how I'm going to play these guys. So just thinking through that pretty much as we go through this. Because obviously, like, Carson Wentz stacks are going to be pretty popular. Like, for me, I'll probably just be at the field with Carson Wentz stacks. But we'll see. It's only Friday, so we can talk through a bunch of this.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of me being on this show specifically, and one of the reasons why I was so excited to do the show, is because I have a pretty big hand in the NFL projections. So it'll be fun to actually talk about stuff that I've been working on over the last few days, and then some new changes as well. Right before we went live, I got word that Jaden Daniels wasn't going to practice, so it's going to be likely Marcus Mariota under center for Washington. So we now have 2 4K quarterbacks. Obviously, you mentioned Carson Wentz, who we saw announced as the starter pretty early, with J.J. McCarthy expected to miss a few weeks with that ankle injury. But the Mariota news is fairly new, So, I mean, right now you can see the projections here for Wentz and Mariota. Again, very rough draft. Like the Mariota update just went through like less than 20 minutes ago. So keep that in mind. So this number might, smoothen out a little bit, but I have him for about 3.5, 4 points higher than Carson Wentz. I do think Wentz has the higher passing ceiling, but Mariota having that rushing floor, that added floor on that fantasy point projection, I think is the reason why he has the edge over Carson Wentz. But what are your thoughts on those two? Let's start off, because obviously those two are probably going to get a lot of attention because it's kind of a weird quarterback slate where we have a lot of, obviously, Josh Allen off the board. Lamar Jackson plays Monday night. Mahomes plays Sunday night. So a lot of the big names that people have been playing so far this season aren't going to be on this slate. So I do think that these 4K guys could draw some more attention. What are your thoughts, Wentz versus Mariota? Do you still prefer Wentz? Is he a better stacking option? How are you breaking down these two?
Wentz is definitely the better stacking option. Now that you're introducing Mariota, Mariota's probably the cash game play, especially when you're saying he's projecting 4 points higher. He's going against a Vegas defense, which he knows pretty well, right? Like he was in Vegas for a little bit there, I think 2 years ago. So yeah, I don't mind with the rushing equity. I don't mind Mariota and cash ahead of Wentz. I think in GBPs I'd lean Wentz because there's a lot of condensed usage on that Viking side, like we talked about Jordan Mason, Justin Jefferson, etc.
Yeah, I would agree with that pretty much 100%. I do think that Mariota is probably going to be the more popular option between the two, and I think he's easier to play on his own. I think when you're playing Carson Wentz, you can't really play him on his own unless you're playing cash. But at that point, I probably just prefer Mariota, more likely to have, 30, 40 rushing yards. Last year, we saw him start 2 games for the Commanders, or at least play a good chunk of 2 games. And he had 16 carries in those 2 games. So if he's going to average, 6 to 8 carries on average in this game, when you're talking about projecting him for that sort of floor, that's going to obviously add to his median outcome. So Mariota, I think, is probably the safer cash option. I would agree, but Wentz, I do think, is still the higher upside stacking option. I mean, we saw what Darnold was able to do when he stepped right into the Vikings offense. I wouldn't be fully surprised if Carson Wentz steps in and has similar production. And if that's the case, there was several slates where Justin Jefferson, obviously they're not going to have Jordan Addison this week, but he'll be back next week. TJ Hawkinson will be there. Jalen Naylor stacking options with Carson Wentz. So yeah, I would agree with that 100%. In terms of some other quarterback options, and we'll kind of segue that into some of our favorite stacks, where else are you looking at quarterback-wise other than these 4K options?
Yeah, Dak for me is going to be the number one, like my highest owned stack as of Friday morning. CeeDee Lamb, Ferguson, I think would be the 2 guys that I'd run along with him. Just versus the Bears, I think it's a pretty good game environment. You can run back Rome on the other side, or DJ Moore for that matter. Secondary for the Bears hasn't been the greatest, so I like Dak. He's probably going to be my highest owned quarterback at 5,900. If the slate were to start in an hour, I'd probably be all over it. That could change by Sunday, but I still think Dak will be in a good spot regardless. So that's where I'm going. He'd be my highest owned. Then, yeah, Justin Herbert, I like on the other side. I think Marion Hampton and Najee will likely eat into each other. I think we're going to continue to see somewhat of a split. So I'm in on the passing game, especially versus the Broncos, where I don't think a lot of people will be too interested in playing Pats or against the Broncos defense hasn't been as advertised, in my opinion. So getting these Broncos, I think at relatively low ownership, whether it be Keenan Allen or Ladd McConkey, I don't hate that route. I don't really need to run it back, but there's Cortland Sutton there if I feel like it, who's going to see a ton of usage. So that's kind of where I'm at for my top 2 quarterbacks. Going down, I like Caleb in the Dak game. You can go right back. Caleb, Rome. We've seen Rome last week go off, but I like the doubles with Rome and DJ Moore. Then we have obviously options on the other side like CeeDee Lamb, etc. So Ferguson for that. CeeDee Lamb and Pickens would probably be my 2 favorite run backs. Those are my 3 main quarterbacks. Are you differ? Who are you looking at from your quarterbacks, the top tier?
Yeah, I do like both quarterbacks in that Chicago and Dallas game. I mean, obviously, when you look at what Chicago has put out on the field defensively, has not been good. Obviously, there's been some injury stuff, and they are looking like they might get a bit healthier this week. But I don't know if it's enough to all of a sudden be this shutdown secondary. I do think that the defense is going to get better. And they were a defense that projected like mid tier for me, so nothing too special, but definitely not like a complete gas can. And they've been closer to the gas can portion so far this year. Obviously, they allowed 52 points to Detroit, who I think had plenty of reasons to go out there and try to score as many points as possible. A little bit of a put them in their place type situation for that game, but nonetheless, I do think Dak is a great option. Caleb, I think, is going to be the guy that projects to be more popular in that game. And the thing I like about Caleb this year is he has had no hesitation to get out of the pocket and create plays with his legs, which will oftentimes translate to fantasy production as long as he's not making mistakes. But that can also look worse for real football. So people who might want to hate on Caleb Williams or maybe call him a bust or whatever, that might look to be true at sometimes when you're watching just the tape or just people who are not paying attention to fantasy production. But those added scrambles are actually going to help his floor for fantasy scoring. So I actually like Caleb Williams in this spot at 5-6. I think he is deserving of this ownership at, if it gets anything above where we have him projected right now, I'd probably consider pivoting as like a top option. But, right now, if I'm looking at that game, I probably do prefer Dak just for the ownership discount, but I don't mind Caleb Williams at this number. I love the Justin Herbert call. I think you nailed that there. I actually got a pretty early bet in on Justin Herbert. I think I bet him on Tuesday or Wednesday. The line opened up at 235.5. I chuckled, I laughed out loud, and then I placed the bet, put it on scores and odds, and now it's up to like 252. So I completely agree. The Denver defense has not been as good. We saw Pat Surtain roll his ankle last game. I know he did return, but that's usually not something that's just going to go away if he's hindered by that at all. It's going to hurt their defense for sure. So I love the Herbert call. They've been extremely pass heavy. You have countless stacking options with McConkey, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson. You can even throw like a dart with one of these value tight ends. So love the Herbert call. They've been extremely pass heavy, so I think they'll continue to do so, especially against a Denver team that might actually force them to score. I mean, obviously the Chiefs game was pretty close, but last week they didn't really have to do anything, and they still had some solid fantasy production. So love the Herbert call.
I didn't realize Caleb was up at 13%.
Yeah.
For me, I might drop him down a notch. Yeah. I didn't realize that
I do think the ownership will almost certainly move around because we don't have Mariota projected for ownership yet. And Mariota could easily slide in here at 13, 14%. So Caleb Williams, I would guess, is probably going to fall under 10%. I don't know if that changes your opinion.
If he falls under 10, I'd be over on him. But if he's above 10, then I'm probably going to be under. I currently aggregated prior to the Mariota stuff, and I have him around 11, and that's like pretty much a good group of projections that I think are relatively accurate. So, I don't know. I think Carson Wentz is the one that we're going to see fall down, and he would be like my fourth quarterback in. Just condensed usage all around. Jordan Mason, Jefferson, Hawkinson, they're all guys that you can kind of consider. We know Wentz likes to throw to his tight end, so I don't mind Hawkinson. It's first Cincinnati. Should be in a game where he can put up points, especially versus Cincinnati defense. So I like Wentz a little bit more than Caleb. If Caleb comes in over 10%, that would be my stand there. The next two are going to be pretty interesting. If we were doing tiers, like I feel like these guys would be the second tier, and it's Bo Nix and Aaron Rodgers. I can just talk about Bo Nix really quick. Versus the Chargers, Bo Nix, first game, didn't play great. Played great last week, and they lost. Like going back to Sutton, little squeaky wheel there. Sutton didn't play great. $6K for Sutton. Don't mind getting to him. I think Troy Franklin's in play at $4K. That's how I would, my first two stacking options, I think I would lean to. And then you don't necessarily have to run it back, but McConkey's there, obviously. Keenan's there. So there are options where you could run it back. Then Aaron Rodgers would come in as the sixth quarterback for me. And basically, I don't think this Patriots defense is that good. I'm not really worried if Christian Gonzalez is back in. He's a young corner, and I feel like Rodgers can manipulate it. I also think he's a tad overrated. So for me, Rodgers, Metcalf, Calvin Austin, I think is super interesting at 4K. I think Calvin Austin would be my favorite secondary receiver from a tournament standpoint in this game, or just in general. There's no real run backs on the Patriots. I'm not really interested in that, but I do like the opportunity of Calvin Austin getting plays out of the slot or wherever he's lined up. I feel like he's a receiver that can really hurt this Patriots secondary. I don't think neither defense is in this game is that good. I don't think I'll have a ton of Drake May, but I like Travion Henderson as a run back. Maybe this is the week he gets going. The issue for me is with running backs, I want usage. And it's kind of a wait to see it thing. And he's kind of right after the game Ramondre Stevenson had. I don't think we're going to really see Travion Henderson come in and get all the carries. So for me, if I was running it back, which I'm probably unlikely to do, my favorite play would be Travion Henderson, but I don't think you really need to do that. So I talked Bo Nix, talked Rodgers. I think Geno's up next at 5,200 for me. Just think he's someone that, like, he's thrown one TD and 4 picks. They might not throw it as much this game, but it is versus Washington. I know Mariota's under center, so it's kind of a situation where it's not going to be the same as Jaden Daniels. This might bump him down, actually, for me, because I ran these projections like prior to the Mariota news coming out. I know it came out like 20 minutes prior to us hopping on the show. So maybe Geno doesn't fall in that category, but if I was stacking Geno, immediately Brock Bowers, I think he's in a phenomenal spot. Jacoby Myers at 5,600. I think he's fine there. I don't really feel the need to run it back right away, especially with Mariota under center, but I think Geno would be the 7th QB in for me. So that's mainly like the second tier if we were doing tiers. What are your thoughts on like the next group of QBs?
Yeah, I do like the Bo Nix call. I think that game could be one that is potentially a defensive game, but the Chargers have a really good secondary and they have struggled sort of against the run here, but that could just be a game where points are forced to put up by the Chargers scoring, and therefore kind of forcing Denver's hand into passing. I mean, I think the Chargers have looked great. They've looked like one of the better teams in football so far, so that's going to force Nix and the Broncos to throw more. That can only help the production. I think for me, the spend up option that isn't getting any attention that I like here is Baker Mayfield. I mean, when you look at his stacking options around him, Emeka Egbuka, Mike Evans, I know Kate Otten has yet to do anything, but he's also in play as a tight end stacking option. You have, Bucky Irving even as a potential pairing. I think this is a spot where the Jets defense has not looked good. Obviously, they did play the Bills last week. They, I think, allowed 30 plus points in that one, and they allowed 36 against Pittsburgh in week 1. So could potentially be a small sample that is forcing this Jets defense to look worse than they actually are. But nonetheless, I do think that the secondary is going to struggle. They lost a couple of their top secondary options from last year coming into this year. And I just don't think that anybody's going to be building around these guys above 6K. I mean, you have Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray. Those are really the only guys I think are going to get any sort of attention above 6K. And I think Herbert and Hurts are going to get some. I don't think Baker Mayfield will get any ownership at all. So I like that stack as like a potential, tournament like dart throw. And obviously on the bring back, you have one of the running backs, you have Garrett Wilson as options. So I also don't mind the Geno Smith call. I do agree that Jaden Daniels not being in this game probably takes away the idea that the Commanders are going to win by like double-digit points and control the game start to finish. So therefore, they're just going to have to throw the ball a ton. I do think this is a team that's going to be pretty pass heavy because I don't think their defense is going to be very good. And I think they have one of the worst run blocking offensive lines in football. So they're going to have to throw quite a bit. We've already heard Chip Kelly talk about Genty being on a load management regimen right now. So that's not ideal. But nonetheless, I think the Geno Smith price is fine. But I think for me, if I'm in that price range, I do prefer Drake May slightly just because I think he has I think he's underpriced for what I think he is as a player at this point. I mean, when you look at his production so far this season, week 1 was fine. Week 2 had the big game. Obviously, elite matchup there against Miami. This is not necessarily an elite matchup, although I do not think the Steelers defense is what it has been over the last couple of years. And I just think Drake May has that rushing floor that allows him to project so well at 5'3". You can make the same case for Daniel Jones as well at 5'4". I know we got a comment about the Daniel Jones stack in the YouTube chat. Finally seen enough to believe in him. I mean, that's fair. I will say 2 weeks, you never know. When we talk about a 2-week sample, let's remember what the Saints did last year. They scored like 70 points in their first 2 weeks and then went on to be one of the worst teams in football. So you never know what can happen after a 2-week sample, but I do agree Daniel Jones has looked good. I do think he has enough of a resume to sort of prove that this is maybe a real thing, considering he has a good offensive line, good weapons around him. We got a couple people in chat. J3 says, I would need a Celsius to produce properly. We want producer Steve. Listen, I'm all hopped up on a cold brew that I had right before we went live, so no worries about the caffeinated energy. I got that plain. I'll have a Celsius later, so don't worry about that. But we do appreciate you guys tuning in. If there are any questions that you guys have or comments as well in the chat, we'll get to those. But let's move on from the quarterbacks. I think we've talked about.
I want to completely scrap Geno. I think I'd be more interested in the running game. With the Mariota news on the other side, I'm kind of completely off Geno.
Yeah, I will say I think this is the best spot we've seen for Genty so far this year, just in terms of like the likelihood of them actually being in the game. And therefore just being able to earn more volume. I know he had 19 carries in that week 1 game against New England, but they were still throwing the ball a lot in that week 1 game. So, I think.
Do we have Genty's ownership? Like, I would imagine he's going to be super low.
Looks like we have him for 4% right now.
I can easily be 2x the field on that. Maybe 3x the field. Get him to 12. I like Genty. Genty's going to, I would imagine, move up. You mentioned Chip Kelly has him on load management, though. That's a little concerning, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that might have just been like a cop-out answer because somebody asked him, what's up with Genty not – because Genty made a comment after the game on Monday night against the Chargers where he was like, yeah, I want more touches. I mean, obviously every player is going to say that. Every player wants the ball more. So that might have been just like a cop-out answer for him. At the end of the day, like this is a number 1 pick, a top 6 pick. I believe he went 6th overall in the draft. Like they're going to use him. Like you don't draft running backs early to not get them the ball. And I think that'll scale up as the season goes on. But I also think that the ball got taken out of his hands last game, right? Like you can't really do much in those scenarios when you're instantly trailing. You're down by double-digit points for the majority of the game. So game script-wise, I do think this is probably the best matchup he's had so far. I think we could easily see Washington stall a little bit. And also, if you're playing Mariota, Genty is more than a fine, potentially contrarian comeback option. I think all things potentially add up for Genty to be a tournament play this week. But let's talk about some of those other options. Quarterbacks we've already discussed, running back and receiver. Let's talk about those guys now. I guess we'll start with running backs. Let's talk about a couple of the top plays, and then we'll talk about some value plays or potential like tournament plays that we like. Obviously, Jordan Mason's going to stand out at the top with Aaron Jones hitting IR. Jordan Mason is going to be, thrust into that RB1 role. Kevin O'Connell already came out and said that they have all the confidence in the world for him to be a bell cow back. The only guy behind him right now is Xavier Scott. Cam Akers was also picked up, so he could potentially factor in as like a change of pace guy. But Xavier Scott is a converted wide receiver. So, I mean, when you're talking about carries, it's very, very likely Jordan Mason handles 80% plus of the carries. And I don't even think that's all that difficult to project. So Mason's going to touch the ball quite a bit. So obviously, let's talk about him first, and then who are some of your other top options at running back?
Yeah, Mason is going to get slammed into pretty much everyone's lineups, especially with that usage rate. I just think it's the right play, even at 5,400. So I'm fine with Mason. Bijan would probably be the second guy at 7,900 that I have a good bit of interest in. Wrote him up as my prop. Little insight. Fresh off 143 yards, 22 carries. Great matchup versus the Panthers coming up. Panthers allow the third most yards per carry to opposing running backs. Panthers could also be without starting nose tackle Bobby Brown and weak sideline backer Patrick Jones. Last year, Bijan ran for 100 against his team for 170 receiving yards and 95 passing yards. This line is at 85.5. I think it's both games. Sorry, 170 and 95. So rushing yards. This line's at 85.5 on Fanatics. You can get it 79.5 on FanDuel, minus 114. So I really like Bijan and that prop. Christian McCaffrey, probably up there next, just a high usage guy. 8,200 for McCaffrey, but we're not seeing those 9K price tags yet, or like we've seen in pretty much his younger days. So I'm still fine with McCaffrey. Jonathan Taylor, I think he's back to pretty much end of rookie year Jonathan Taylor. The only thing you have to worry about is really Daniel Jones at the goal line. He's predominantly getting all the usage, so don't mind JT at all. Tony Pollard, people have been trying to make Tony Pollard work because of the usage for the last 2 weeks, and this week I'm going to be in on Pollard again. I just think versus the Colts, seeing a majority of the usage at 5,700, he's a fine RB play. If you want to pivot off the Dallas passing game, Javonte Williams is another running back I definitely have interest in. He's been super efficient behind that good Dallas offensive line, so I don't mind him at all. Josh Jacobs is another one with Green Bay. Just going to see, I don't know, they have Jaden Reed out. I think Jacobs probably is going to get likely steamed up by Sunday, I would imagine, just with Green Bay's, what's the total in that game? What's the spread in that game? Green Bay.
Looks like it's 9.5, I believe, last I looked.
Yeah, 9.5. So Jacobs' ownership, I would imagine, is going to go up. Where do we have Jacobs' ownership currently?
Looks like we have him at 11%. But I do agree. I think it'll go up, especially.
I think that's going to go up. Yeah.
So. We also just got news that Tucker Kraft is uncertain to play, so it sounds like he's highly questionable. So, if Reed and Kraft are out, those are the top two passing options. So we could easily see more attachment to the run game.
And more lean on Jacobs, I'm guessing.
Yeah. But we do have a couple of running back questions, so we'll jump into these real quick. Barkley, a sneaky play. How much is he owned? Because he owns the Rams. He did have I think it was last year, he had a big game against the Rams. The Rams, I don't think that they're a team that is necessarily going to be one that can often be ran all over. Obviously, they're a team that I think projects to be sort of middle of the pack against the run. They have a couple guys on the outside on their front line that I think are pretty solid options. Some of these young guys, but nonetheless, it's hard to not like Barkley every week, especially on a slate where he's going to go low. And for me, last week, obviously McCaffrey was the super popular option, and for me, the pivot off of him was Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs could have had a monster game. I mean, he had 2 touches for 40+ yards, and that was pretty much it. He obviously scored a touchdown, and then he had 2 carries for 40+ yards, or 2 touches for 40+ yards. He could have had a monster game. Got pretty unlucky there. For Barkley, I think it's a little bit more difficult because you have Bijan and CMC here, both in great spots. I mean, Bijan is in maybe the best matchup. I think we project Carolina as a top 3 matchup for running backs in our model here. So, Bijan's in a smash spot. But, I mean, if you're playing, let's just do this thought experiment. How many lineups does it take for you to get a Saquon lineup over Bijan or CMC?
I'm probably going to boost Barkley by the end. I'm probably going to get a lot more Barkley. Barkley was the 3rd prop I wrote up. Last year, destroyed this Rams defense and the prop was basically over 18.5, longest rush over 18.5 yards. Last year went for 255 yards versus Rams defense on the ground. 72 was his long. In the regular season matchup, he went for 205. 78 was the long in their playoff matchup. 205 in the playoffs. 78 was the long. Week 3 last year was when we saw Saquon starting to break off these long runs. So I think it was the Saints. He went for 65 yards on 1 carry in week 3 last year, probably when the Saints started their demise, I would imagine. Rams so far this year have allowed 4.6 yards per carry to RB1s. Definitely have an interest in Saquon's over 86.5 as well. If you're betting on Bet365, I like 20 plus yard, longest run at 20 plus for plus 105, 30 plus at plus 300, 40 plus for plus 625, and 50 plus at plus 1200. So those are pretty good lines for Saquon, and just hitting the main prop for me would be over 18.5 on DraftKings minus 110. But I don't know. I love Saquon this week. So I would imagine by Sunday, in terms of my exposure, just with the usage he gets and the chance for an explosive play, I'm going to come way up on Saquon Barkley, even at 7.8K. So yeah, I'm in on Saquon.
Yeah, I would agree. I think in terms of the props, I love those numbers. We project him for I think right around 95 yards or so, I think, this week. So he looks pretty good in the model as well. I mean, obviously you alluded to 200 yards against 200 yards one time in a season is unreal. That's a game that you'll often remember. The fact that he did it 2 times in one season last year against the same team is pretty hilarious. So yeah, I like those numbers. In terms of the ownership, obviously when you're talking Saquon being 12%, Bijan 19, McCaffrey 25, in the smaller field stuff, those are also going to, get more skewed, right? People are going to play CMC and Bijan more. Saquon could easily fall under 10%. And, even if they were the same ownership, you could easily make a case that Saquon is equally as likely to have the 35, 40 point game compared to CMC and Bijan, or at least fairly reasonably. I mean, obviously Saquon has all the upside in the world. I think he's even better if Will Shipley's out, just because of the fact that we've actually seen him play in these change of pace, long down and distance situations as well, which he wasn't doing last year. Obviously, they had Kenny Gainwell last year. I don't think Will Shipley is the same sort of player as Kenny Gainwell, but in week 1, we were seeing Will Shipley play in some of those situations before he got hurt. So if Shipley's out, even better for Saquon Barkley. So yeah, I like that. Shout out. Rhino says, yeah, Barkley over 500 yards in his last 2 versus the Rams. Rebar said on the Pick 6 show, which came out, I think, either yesterday or Wednesday. Always a good show to watch. So make sure you guys are tuning into that
Dean's
one.
the host on that one.
Yeah, Dino's there. Yep.
I tried listening to him on 3X Wednesday night.
Like 3X speed?
Yeah.
That's intense. 1.5 is crazy for me sometimes. 3 is.
I usually listen to, but I bumped it up because I needed to speed through Dino and get all the other takes from the other host.
Yeah, to hear him talk about some off the wall movie that he needed to bring up. Every time I'm on an MLB show with him, I always feel like I'm being interrogated about movies that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
But
well, he's supposedly this movie, like he's a movie snob, but he hasn't seen, he never seen Gladiator until like a year ago.
I can't throw any shit. I am so bad at saying movies. It's it's something I've been trying to actively be better at, but it has not worked. But
I have someone at my door real quick. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. I'll while you do that, I'll answer this question from Shiv Daddy. How far are we moving Ken Walker up if Sharps does not play? I mean, so we even saw a couple of pretty stark movements in the prop lines for Kenneth Walker after the Charbonnet news. For those that missed it, Charbonnet has not practiced this week. He missed Wednesday and Thursday practice due to an injury. Walker's rushing prop opened up at 52.5. It's up to, I think it was up to 66.5 now. So I mean, the markets are even applying that as well. For me, I mean, you would potentially look at probably similar receiving work. I don't think they'd all of a sudden make him like a 17-18% target share guy if you combine those two. Right now we have Kenneth Walker at 11% target share, right around 12%, and then Sharp at 8%. So I don't think that the receiving work will go up much, but the rushing work is where it's going to come into a big increase. They have George Alani behind those guys. I'm sure they'll call up a practice squad guy. I don't think they're just going to trot K9 out there for 70% of the carries because they're still worried about his foot, right? They've talked about it all off season, all preseason. They talked about it even a couple times this week, being careful about that. So they'll find other guys to get touches behind him, but nonetheless, he would project much better than he is now and just as one of the top plays. So yeah, I would say that it probably would be just slamming in K9 and Mason in cash, or at least for sure one of them, depending on the spend up options that you like at the receiver option.
Kenneth Walker, my second prop, over 53.5 on BetRiver, -115. Yeah, line's already jumped to 67.5 on some books. Charbonnet might be out, etc. We kind of all hit on that.
Yep.
Great matchup versus the Saints, averaging 4.69 yards per carry this season to running backs. Last year was 4.84, which was third most in the NFL. So I like the spot for Kenneth Walker. I did these last night, so I don't know if these lines are all still sticky, but these write-ups were done last night. So, yeah, over 53.5 for Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, I'm seeing 67.5 now for Walker. So if you can still, if that bet Rivers,
still, I doubt it. It's probably not there anymore.
Yeah.
But on
yeah,
Bet
but it might come. Once we get, like, let's say Charbonnet ends up playing, we see that number fall back down to the mid to high 50s range. It could still be a spot to like, and maybe with the angle that Charbonnet is a little bit banged up, limited, and K9, who you could argue he earned more work last week, much more efficient than Charbonnet was. But Charbonnet is not necessarily going anywhere as long as he's healthy. They're both going to split it pretty evenly. Andrew says he loves the Dean slander. There's no slander. It's all true.
I don't mind slandering.
It's just
I can slander Dean. I can slander. Yeah, I'll slander.
Yeah, you've earned that, right? You've worked with him, plenty, and he's given it to you, so you got to return the favor. But Yankees asked, do you try to use all your salary on a 3-max 2,000 person contest, or leave a lot on the table? If you're talking main slate, I would always recommend using as much salary as possible. I mean, there are certainly situations where you can leave a few $100, but unless you're talking showdown, there's no real need to leave any more than a few hundred.
I think like 200, 49.8 is probably good in that scenario. Not that you have to be strict to 49.8, but you could pay up to 50K, obviously. But the most I would leave in a contest like that is probably 200 if I'm leaving any cash at all.
Yep, I would agree. Bo Nix or Danny Dimes?
I like Nix. I like Nix.
Yeah, I think that one's tight. I think I would slightly lean Danny Dimes just because of that rushing floor. Like he has 3 push touchdowns already. If he's going to have that built into his floor of projection, like he doesn't even need to do all that much. It sounds like Jaden Daniels was officially rolled out, so we'll certainly smooth out the projections on those guys and Mariota as well. But the projections already updated with Mariota in there. If you guys want to check it out at Lineup HQ. Ricky Rose asked who's the backup Marcus Mariota. We touched on him a little bit. I'm sure we'll circle back there in a minute. But we talked about some of these top plays at running backs. Let's talk about some of these value plays or contrarian plays. Who's sticking out to you as like guys who are maybe going under the radar?
I don't mind like getting back on the Breece Hall train in this game versus Tampa Bay. Obviously, a lot of people played Breece Hall, much to their dismay, at a very high clip last week. I was one of those people. I don't mind playing some Breece. He would be someone I'm probably going to try to get over on. From there, in terms of like low-owned guys that kind of stick out, sort by ownership here. Javonte Williams, I think, is someone. What's he around the industry? What do we have? Oh, he's not that low. I have him at 10%. I guess we have him at 14. He'd be someone at 10% that I'd come in over on. Just trying to think through like someone who really stands out. I'm going to be pretty chalky at running back. Like, I think I'm definitely going to end up probably getting more Saquon than what I'm currently getting. If Saquon was to come in under 10%, like I'd be all over that. Jacobs is going to get steamed up. Where do we have Tony Pollard currently? 17%.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's no real running back that's standing out to me from a low-owned perspective. Are you seeing anyone that you kind of like to get to? Kenneth Walker would be one. Obviously, we kind of hit on him. I think Genty at 4%, especially with now it's Marcus Mariota on the other side. I think Genty would be someone that I think a lot of people are down on, and he would be someone I'd be trying to get in the builds and being overweight on that 4% for sure.
Yeah, for me, I think the guys who stick out. I mean, we talked about Saquon a little bit. I think he's a really good tournament play. I think Josh Jacobs is also a guy who could potentially get even squeezed a little bit at this 11%. I do think that there will be talk about all these missing Packers players, but I just think that anybody who's sort of in the 6 to 7K range could easily go overlooked because you have Bijan and CMC up top. We're going to get a ton of ownership, and then you have Jordan Mason down low. So yeah, a lot of people can play 3 running backs, and I think Jalen Warren's going to get a lot of ownership. Javonte Williams, Tony Pollard. So there's like 3 or 4 guys under 6K, and there's like 2 or 3 guys above 7K that I think are going to get so much of the running back ownership. So I think anybody from this 6 to 7.5 range is going to go overlooked in a pretty significant way. So Jacob sticks out to me. Bucky Irving sticks out to me. Jonathan Taylor sticks out to me as well. So those are probably my favorite like spend up options that are going to get a little bit overlooked. In terms of some cheaper options, J.K. Dobbins I don't mind. Bill Krosky-Merritt is someone who sticks out, obviously with no Austin Eckler and no Jaden Daniels. Like that, you can argue Austin Eckler is probably 40-50% of the snaps that are now vacated that he's going to step into at least some of those. And then the drop down from Mariota to Jaden Daniels, that's probably a 10 to 12% rushing share being vacated now, as well as the 15 to 20% rushing share that Eckler vacated. So there's a lot of touches and work opening up for this rushing production for Krosky-Merritt, who, I mean, in July, he was everybody's favorite player. In August, he was everybody's most hated player. In September, he was everyone's like, poisonous fruit that nobody could even think to talk about. And now at 1% own, like this is the best spot possible for Bill. So I mean, you couldn't ask for a better spot for JCM in terms of like his debut. Sure, you have to worry about maybe the running back rotation isn't as projectable as you might hope. Like maybe Jeremy McNichols works in some, maybe Chris Rodriguez gets more work. But I mean, in terms of like the potential touches and snaps, like this is pretty much the best spot you could ask for a first game. And it's even better that nobody is really on it, or at least we're not projecting that at just 1% projected ownership right now. So JCM is certainly going to be one of my favorite options. But yeah, any other thoughts at running back?
No, that's pretty much it. We kind of covered everything. I think Genty is the one that's sticking out for me now, that at 4% ownership and with the QB change, like he's someone I think I'm definitely interested in getting over on.
Yeah, I know we touched on a lot of our favorite pass catching options as well in the stacking portion. So real quick, let's just go through receiver, and then we'll go through tight end, and then we'll talk about some props and some bets that we like. So real quick at the receiver position, maybe guys you haven't touched on stacking wise, because obviously we talked a lot about our quarterback's favorite stack. So a lot of those guys are going to go sort of hand in hand, but any names that you like that are sticking out aside from maybe stacking options, or just guys who you really want to highlight?
Yeah, Puka, I think, is someone I'm definitely going to have interest in. I think the majority of the field's probably going to have interest in him, but he's someone I just want to get over on. Same with JSN, just seeing it. They're pretty much the same player for a $1,200 difference. So just as much as Puka and JSN as I can possibly get into my lineups, I think works. Jefferson with Wentz, like I would imagine, like with Mariota now being introduced as like the starting QB for Washington, this Minnesota stack as a whole is going to likely go down in ownership. I'll be over on Jefferson, especially with Carson back there. So at 4K, I think just playing that whole stack and getting all the usage makes a good bit of sense. From there, like Mike Evans in that Jets game, you kind of talked about it. Like they're just going to be throwing, you would imagine. And I think both teams are going to throw the ball a ton. So Mike Evans at 6,600, I'm fine getting to. Brian Thomas, I think, has a little bit of a squeaky wheel narrative there. Like he's going to score points, and he's probably going to be under 10% owned. He's eventually going to get it going. So I like Brian Thomas at 6,400. Tet, I wrote up. I don't mind Ted. 5,900 for Ted. He looked like he's coming into his own last week, so don't mind Ted McMillan at all. Cortland Sutton, if I'm pairing him with Bo Nix, I really like that. Just at 5% ownership, I can easily get over on that. What do we have Sutton at for ownership? 3%?
Yeah, 3.5. Yep.
3.5. Yeah. Who else? Maybe Dobbs comes into play now at 4,800. Like if you're playing like this Green Bay Packers stack and Jacobs were to get chalky, you have Kraft, Jaden Reed out. Like Dobbs just makes sense. He's going to be on the field a ton, so you can see Dobbs getting in the end zone. That's pretty much wide receiver. Dontavian Wicks is probably going to pop up a bit, I would imagine, once we get the Kraft news. So, yeah, that's pretty much wide receiver for me. How about you?
Yeah, I think Puka and JSN are going to be guys who are going to get a lot of attention, rightfully so. I mean, both these guys are in the top 3 to 4 in terms of target share right now. And I mean, Puka had a huge game last week, and that was even with Devontae Adams having a big week. I think Devontae Adams could have some trouble this week because he doesn't really have the ability to move around the formation right now to avoid the tough matchups because they're obviously allowing Puka to be that guy. So, we saw it in week 1, right? Like with Dallas against Philly, George Pickens got stuck on Quinyon Mitchell pretty much all game. They moved CeeDee Lamb around the formation. CeeDee Lamb had all the good matchups, all the mismatches. That's what Puka's in right now, and obviously Adams is going to get a little bit of trouble. I still think Adams is a good tournament play, but Puka is going to be able to be the guy that they actually design plays around and move around the formation, which I think is a big plus. I love Garrett Wilson this week. I've gotten a little bit of flack for saying that I do think that this is actually a better spot for Garrett Wilson than if Justin Fields were the quarterback. I might be wrong there. Maybe there's more volatility with Garrett Wilson now with Tyrod Taylor under center, but you already had all the volatility in the world with Justin Fields. I mean, last week, Garrett Wilson had more fantasy points in the less than a quarter that he played with Tyrod Taylor than he did with Justin Fields in the first 3 quarters. Obviously, Garrett Wilson had a good first game with Justin Fields, but I just think Tyrod Taylor is going to, result in fewer rushing volume, more pass attempts in general. So when you're talking about even just getting another 5 to 10 potential pass opportunities, so many of those looks are going to go to Garrett Wilson. So I actually like this spot for Garrett Wilson with no Justin Fields. If you're not playing Bijan Robinson, Drake London has to be a first look. I think he is one of the more primed bounce back candidates right now. Obviously, he had a bad week 2, got banged up a little bit in week 1 on that almost touchdown. I think he's a great bounce back option. Donese brought up Rome Odunze here. I mean, Rome has been fantastic so far this year. He's a smash play as well. But if you're looking to get contrarian, let's say you're building around this Chicago-Dallas game that's going to be popular, I don't mind going to DJ Moore over Rome Odunze. I mean, I do think we're at the point where now we have to really wonder if Rome is just the number 1 here. But bottom line, when you look at it, so far this season, 7 fewer targets for DJ Moore. Yes, but he's averaging more yards per reception. He's only run 5 fewer routes than Rome Odunze. And their slot rate is actually pretty similar. So they're using DJ Moore in creative ways as well. So I don't mind looking for DJ Moore as a potential bounce back option. JB Yankees asking about Keenan Allen.
We kind of talked about both Odunze, Moore, and Allen at the top of the show. Yeah, we like all 3.
Yep. I think pretty much all those Chargers options you can stack with Herbert for sure, or even play on their own. Tight ends. Anybody sticking out? It does sound like Tucker Kraft might be closer to doubtful, but what are your thoughts there on tight end?
Yeah, Trey McBride versus the 49ers. I think he's the one at 5,700 that I'm going to have the most interest in. You compare him with Kyler, obviously. Like Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson in that Dallas game, which I'm going to be targeting heavily. I'm going to be over on Ferguson. Tyler Warren, we talked about Daniel Jones, and the majority of the field is going to like Daniel Jones. I think he's a really good pair with Daniel Jones. Brock Bowers is probably going to be knocked down my list now just because of, basically, I don't know what the passing volume is going to be in this game when I was expecting to be more of a shootout prior to prior to the Daniels news. So like Brock Bowers. Juwan Johnson, just seeing all the snaps for the Saints, I think he's perfectly fine. Dalton Schultz, kind of the same deal. Although they get Kirk back this week, so it might hurt Schultz's floor. It's mainly the tight ends that I'm going to be playing a good bit of. Maybe throw some Pat Freiermuth in there versus the Patriots.
Yeah, I think for me, tight end's mostly going to be, within stacks. But I think if, guys outside the stacks I'm looking at, I do like Juwan Johnson. He has had arguably the best role amongst tight ends, obviously, other than Trey McBride. But, I mean, Brock Bowers has been limited with the knee injury, but Juwan Johnson has had a really good role. Tyler Warren missed practice on Wednesday, practice limited on Thursday with a toe injury. Sounds like that's going to be pretty mild. Sounds like he's good to go. So I like Tyler Warren at 4-4. The rest of these guys I think are mostly going to be within stacks. But in terms of a value tight end that I like, Dalton Schultz sort of stands out at 3-4. But again, it's getting pretty thin down there. What would it take for you to play Hawk? Are you saying only with Carson Wentz, or are you playing? Because Hawk he's been looking rough. He looks slow out there. He doesn't look involved in the offense at all. No designed plays. His first read target share is like lower than both Adam Thielen and Jalen Naylor, despite playing like double their snaps. So only with Wentz are you playing Hawk?
I think you can play him without him. Like, I think it's a different situation. JJ McCarthy seems like it's probably that the reason he's only the first read target share is probably down is because, I mean, if you're JJ McCarthy, you probably just want to get the ball to Justin Jefferson, right? Or you're Kevin O'Connell and you're trying to help out JJ McCarthy. Yeah, the rookie is beneficial using the tight end, but if you have Justin Jefferson there, just get it to Justin Jefferson. So I don't know. I think Wentz will open up the playbook a little bit for them, and I'm fine with buying low on Hawkinson, especially at that price tag.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I think if I was, down here in this range, I think Harold Fannin is a guy I'm still looking at. 3-6, had a big week 1, bad week 2. So I think people kind of maybe forgetting about him, but he's still third on this team in terms of targets, running a lot of routes. So Fannin is also a guy that I'm somewhat interested in. But yeah, for the most part, tight end is mostly going to be within stacks other than the guys that we mentioned. Let's do some props real quick.
I banged mine out, so that's all. I only had those 3.
Okay.
And I can read them off. Bijan Robinson over 79.5. Rushing yards -114 on FanDuel. Kenneth Walker over 53.5 rushing yards -115 on BetRiver. I don't know if that's gone up or gone down. I did these last night. Prop number 3 was Saquon Barkley, longest rush over 18.5 yards -110 on DraftKings. And I think you can take 20 plus 20 at plus 105, plus 30 at plus 300, plus 40 at plus 625, and plus 50 at plus 1200. I think those are all in play versus a team he ran for 500 yards against in 2 meetings last year. So yeah, he's obviously can he's extremely explosive. So
yeah,
the latter time.
Yeah, I like it. You gave Don Easy what he asked for. He likes the ladders. Unfortunately, I don't have any official ladders right now. I'm sure I'll have at least some guys who I have leans on. As always, all my bets can be found at Scores and Odds. I have three bets in here that moved a ton already. Put them in either 4 or 5 days ago for some of these guys. So I took the Falcons -3.5 early. I think even before the Falcons Sunday night game, that's to 5.5, 6 at some places now. So I still like it at 5.5 if you can get it there. Obviously, it was better at 3.5, but if it's 5.5, still like Falcons here. Panthers absolutely banged up on their front line. Justin Herbert over 235.5 passing yards. I touched on. It looks like it might be at 240 still at Fanatics. I don't have Fanatics actually open in front of me, but our site's showing a line there for 240. Totally fine with it at 240. Other than that, probably stay away from it at 250. Ladd McConkey over 50.5 receiving yards. That also moved quite a bit. It's at 65.5 on PrizePicks, 63.5 at MGM. That's probably a stay away at that number now, but the 50.5 initial line was just laughable when I saw that 2 days ago. So 2 plays that do look like they're still active. Breece Hall under 60.5 rushing yards. I know you mentioned liking him. I actually don't mind Breece Hall for fantasy this week, but that's because I think he's still going to be highly involved in the passing attack. 5-6+ catches, I think, is in play for Breece Hall. If I was talking a ladder just strictly right now, Breece Hall receptions would be the ladder I was looking at. They should not be able to run the ball against the Bucs here. The Bucs, they did lose Kalijah Cansey up front, but they still have Vita Vea, who's one of the best run stoppers in football. They've shut down everybody that they faced so far this year. Even Bijan Robinson there in week 1. They've been very good against the run. So I like Bijan under 60.5. And then finally, TreVeyon Henderson under 6.5 rush attempts. I mean, he got benched last week because of some holding calls. I do think that it's not going to be a season-long thing. But, I mean, right now it's clear that his involvement in the offense is as a pass catcher. And even Antonio Gibson had more rush attempts than him last week. So definitely some volatility there in his workload. So I'm taking the under 6.5 rush attempts. You got anything else for us?
That's it. Those are my props.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate you bringing some props to the table. I'm looking forward to. I'm obviously going to tail those. I love the Saquon Barkley ladder. So I will definitely be in on that as well. But yeah, we'll be back next week. Same time, Friday. We'll be here every Friday at 12 Eastern time, noon. So make sure you guys are tuning in. Appreciate the questions. Appreciate the involvement. We'll see you guys next week. Bobby, anything else you want to say to the people?
That's it. Good luck this weekend, guys.
See you guys.